It might seem strange to go over Michael Burry's latest portfolio to discuss what he's been buying, especially given that just a few weeks ago, he had tweeted to sell. Is he just talking out of both sides of his mouth? Or, as I think, there's usually more to Michael Burry than meets the eye. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Daniel. You're watching Unrivaled Investing. Let's dive into what did Michael Burry buy? What does his portfolio look like now? What does this mean? Are there any lessons or insights, potentially actionable thoughts that you can consider for your own investment journey? In full disclosure, this is not financial advice. So let's understand, what Michael Burry was buying and selling. Well, when you look at what he was buying and selling, there was a lot of turnover. Most of his holdings, he either sold out of completely or he reduced significantly. Now, we did see rallies with most of these positions. And then he proceeded to buy a bunch of new positions, buy Black Knight, for example, which is a merger arbitrage play with ICE stock or Intercontinental. They do mortgage servicing software and consumer loan software. And there might be an opportunity there because the deal price is around 85 versus the stock trading at 65. So if you have high conviction that the deal will go through, that might be compelling. Coherent, just went through a transformative acquisition, multi-billion-dollar acquisition. They do something in lasers for a lot of different things, like partly helping the lasers that are used to make battery packs and stuff like that. So there's, this is a levered industrial play. He was buying two of the Chinese e-commerce companies, Alibaba and JD. Personally, in full disclosure, I do own positions in both of those. And when I look at them, it's interesting to see that he was buying during the fourth quarter. It wouldn't surprise me if he was buying during the capitulation, where things were just dropping, around 20% in a day due to some of the news that was going on at the time. Wolverine Worldwide, this is a levered, shoe brand business where it's been selling off some of its brands to pay down some of their debt. MGM Resorts, another interesting setup. This is, effectively a company trading around its pre-COVID levels despite buying back something like 20% plus of their shares outstanding. SkyWest is what could be a cheap, small airline provider. And so you're looking at this and there's like a lot of different stocks he's buying. And at the same time, he's, selling out of stuff that he was just buying in the last quarter. So when you see this type of high turnover, for one, it means it's going to be hard for you to have some sort of actionable insight for you to say, oh, I'm going to make this part of my portfolio. I think what this is sort of saying he found value in these things, but he often has higher turnover portfolio. Does that mean he's not a great investor? Not necessarily. I think he's actually a very, very good investor. But what you can look at some of these names, and I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of them myself. If I find something interesting, I'll call it out to my subscribers at Unrivaled Investing. I might look at Black Knight in more detail. And so you look at that and you say, okay, could this be part of my journey? Would I want to be interested in holding this for longer? That type of thing. Like, is there value here? But recognize he's probably on a very different journey than you. And it's also a very different portfolio. And that's why it's a really important point to understand is he's doing these things that are much, much smaller bets as a percentage of his portfolio. I mean, you might think, wow, it was a $9 million bet to buy, Black Knight or a couple $1 million on all these other things. But the reality is this is a really small position. This is not the next big long for Michael Burry. He got the big short right. These are not the big long positions. These are, I think his largest holding, when you add it all together, it's around $50 million, I believe, in holdings, give or take. This is in contrast to his personal net worth that's estimated to be around $300 million. Throw in a couple $100 million from having friends and family that, want to invest with you. So he's probably managing somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion would be my guess, maybe more. And, you look at this portfolio of $50 million. So he either has a lot of stocks internationally or two, he's still sitting out. And sitting out, increasingly makes sense to me as I see a lot of things just rip higher. And I'm thinking the valuations aren't that compelling. And by the way, the Federal Reserve keeps hiking rates and you're currently getting, over 4% on your cash. I personally keep my cash at Interactive Brokers, link below, for that 4% on their cash balances. And so I look at this and I think he is eager to do a big long, but he's not seeing it. So he's doing all these little small things just to sort of, deal with his, ants in the pants type of thing. Like looking for something compelling, like, oh, Chinese stocks sold off 20% in a day. I guess, they are kind of interesting. I guess I'm going to buy low. Like that's what I think he's doing, because at the end of the day, buying, let's say $8 million worth of Chinese stocks, which is what he did, that's not really going to change anything for him. That's not a game changer. That's, I think, some small, these are small bets for him. This isn't going all in on a high conviction idea. I think throughout this market cycle, I expect to see a large bet and much more capital allocated, but I still think, looking at Michael Burry's portfolio, that he's largely sitting out. He's largely saying, at least with U.S. stocks, he's largely saying, I'm not finding these super compelling things that trade at the 10 to lower free cash flow multiples, and he's a deep value free cash flow guy. And so in turn, he's just making sort of these, short-term trades that he can get in and out of. And for the record, I mean, if you look at what he's done, his performance with a lot of these things has worked out. I mean, a lot of them ripped higher, 20, 30, 50% in just a few months. So it's not like he's losing money, I would suspect, on these things. I just think he's just sort of ants in the pants. He's not making a big bet, and he's there saying, it's kind of ridiculous what's going on with the market, because, the Fed's still tightening. He's over, he's still bearish. That's still the view. And so I think cash is probably his largest position by far, would be my guess based on this, because the reality is you add up these holdings and it's really not a lot, unless there's some foreign stock that he owns just in size. But I'm just not seeing that. If you have a different view, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I personally, this isn't about worshiping an individual. I don't worship him. But for me, it's always constantly looking for new ideas. And, for example, over in the last year or so, I saw that he bought McKesson, and I had done work on those players years ago. And so when I saw it, I said, I should really refresh my notes. And I said, okay, that's great. And then I looked at it, and I said, holy smokes, this has gotten really cheap. And it was trading at like 9 times free cash flow. And so I bought it for myself. And then I saw like the next quarter that he sold. And I said, okay, well, I don't care that he sold. Like he put it back on my radar that I should focus on it. And it performed extremely well over the last couple of years. I think it's around a double in the last few years. I did call it out to my subscribers at unrivaledinvesting.com. at the time. And I had made a sizable percentage, for myself. So for me personally, I look at this as, just sort of scouting for new ideas. Where did he potentially find value? And does it align with my own values, my own investment journey for something that I want to hold for longer term? Because that's my focus. My focus is, let's find these things from a multi-year perspective. But he's turning over rocks, seeing things that, fit him. But clearly, he's still not finding super deep value and sitting tight, because I think he still has that bearish outlook. If you enjoyed this video, please make a point of hitting that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching Unrivaled Investing.